So I guess this kind of signifies the kickoff to what might be a regular thing. We'll see. But Felix and I were talking about how it might be interesting to develop some content together around some mutual areas of interest that circumscribe Ultimate and might have some overlapping sort of Venn diagram stuff happening between Go and chess as well. So I think we're all Ultimate players, but we're also either also chess players and or Go players or both. So let's go around the circle, and I'll go last in terms of introducing briefly ourselves and what our background is with Frisbee and or the board game of choice.
My name is Cédric. I've played Ultimate for like 8 years now, I guess. I started with Florian over there. Play mainly in France, but a little bit in UK and in Japan. In terms of board games, I guess I started Go like early in my teenage ages. But I think reach like one dan, first dan around it. But now it's not that much because I don't play enough, I guess. But mainly played like self-taught Go games, so not that much in theory. So I'm lacking of Joseki and stuff, but I usually play like a calculation and stuff during the game. And I've played chess for like now 8 years as well, because since we met, Florian taught me how to play chess. So I play the three of them all together.
Very good. Florian, do you want to jump in next with an introduction?
Yeah, sure. So we started Ultimate in 2013 together in junior college. I've started playing chess competitively in 2009, if I recall. 2003. So I was 9 at the time. I've done, I think, 3 or 4 French championships. I'm not a master, international master or FIDE master yet. I'm trying to become one at the moment. I'm more of a national master level player. So I'm slightly over 2K on the board, but I've stopped playing for...
Oh my god, okay. So you're a very serious chess player.
Yeah, much better at chess than Ultimate, unfortunately. I'm 2K4, 2K5 online, only chess. I'm alternating between the two. So that's also why when writing the Ultimate in Motion book with my wife, we've drawn a lot of parallels between chess and Ultimate, because that was at least my area of expertise.
Cool.
Wow.
Okay, so I think that's...
I didn't realize. I had no idea you were rated that high. That just like blew my mind a bit. All right, Felix, do you want to hop in next?
Sure. Yeah, I've been playing Ultimate since about 1999, 2000. I've always had like a fascination and the eagerness to get into Go, and then the opportunity arose in around 2006. And yeah, as soon as I got into it, I kind of didn't look back. Kind of went a bit mad, like at the beginning. My brain was just like trying to solve little mini Go problems in the background whilst I was like trying to hold conversations about other things. So like it definitely did something very strange to my brain. And then I got really into it for a couple of years. Managed to beat the person that introduced me to it, and we still play to this day. So that was 15 years ago. Since then, I started a Go club in Brighton, but I haven't been playing like that regularly or that intensively. Quite often I'll just play at the Go club once a week, and I reached about 4Q standard, maybe 5Q. The rankings in go from like when you're a beginner, you're like 30Q or so, and then you go less up to like 20Q, 10Q, 5Q, and then down to 1Q, and then you become a 1 dan, and then 2 dan, 3 dan, and the professionals are like 6 dan and stuff. And Cédric says he's reached the 1 dan level, which is way stronger than the 5Q level. And my experience with chess is I reached a semi-final in the primary school championship. But yeah, other than that, like my chess isn't very strong, I wouldn't say. Brain's far more suited to Go.
Well, your chess is going to be, your chess is going to be stronger than my Go, because I've certainly never played even at the elementary school level. To introduce myself, my name's Ryan Lowe, and I guess Felix and I met through the, YouTube world of publishing YouTube videos. Felix is doing Hive Ultimate. I'm doing FrisbeeThrows.com, trying to teach people how to throw farther. And that's really started to lean me heavily toward the individual player and the beginner class, I would say, of a Frisbee player. Whereas Felix, if I can speak for you a little bit, you seem to be way more at the almost advanced strategy level and systems level of Ultimate as a whole, and how the game is evolving in the big picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want us to work together so that we're covering the whole thing. But that's
so it'd be good. We kind of had this idea that we could sort of paint the canvas with two different brushes from two different approaches. So it'd be nice to blend this together. And Chess and Go kept coming up, so that's why this podcast or videocast seemed to beg to exist, at least in terms of a trial run. My experience as a chess player, I've been playing for probably almost my whole life, so maybe 30 years, against primarily my dad. He's probably rated around 13 or 1400 in the app, and then a bit lower on the board. And I'm also probably around that as well. And then as a Frisbee player, I've been playing for about 20 years. Did a little bit of tournament play, but pretty much stopped there. And I've always kind of been drawn to the recreational side of the sport, the social side, and helping players who are newer to the game try to get into it and break some of those boundaries, most of which are self-imposed, and I imagine many of which are also shared by people picking up these games for the first time. So Go and chess and even Ultimate, I imagine in many ways are intimidating for the same reasons when you're getting into them. So I thought, just for a starting point, it might be interesting to look at how games start, all three of these games. So with chess, you've got two players. With Ultimate, you've got two teams. And with Go, you've got two players. I know in chess, there are options for creating balanced games where the stronger player might start with fewer pieces, or if it's a timed game, less time to work with. Is there something like that in Go?
Yeah. Cédric, do you want to answer whilst I show the board?
Yeah, you can show the board. Actually, there's it's
even better suited.
Even better suited in Go, because each rank you have in difference between two players. You can add one additional stone for the weaker player to make a fair game.
They go on these little points here. They're these handicap points.
Yes, and you can have, like, in the official game, you can have up to 6 stones difference. So you can play against people like are +/- rank around yourself, actually. So it's kind of fair. And if you have the same level, you have like a rule to make it the person who starts second on the board like have 6 or 7 points more than the other, because he's not he doesn't start. So it's kind of a fair system to have.
And that's a way to counter the inherent advantage that the white player have in chess. The way you can add points to the player defending is a way to make up for the loss of initiative for not playing the first move.
So the thing that strikes me in all of this is that I was thinking about this this morning, and how one of the ways that I started to try to create a straight comparison between Ultimate and chess, that being my area of experience for the board game, is that the Ultimate team is almost like the players on the board when considered individually, and then the sum of the players and the sum of their experience almost becomes this like invisible team entity, like a meta sort of player that governs the game for each individual team. or each individual set of players that constitute each team. But there is no starting, as far as the teams I play with and the leagues that I play in, there isn't the same consideration put in place. Like there's a ladder system that will resort the teams to try to keep them more or less playing teams of equal caliber, but it's not organized as well, I don't think, as in chess and as in Go, where they at the beginning of the game you'll have a material advantage or a tempo or a time disadvantage. Frisbee, having something like that implemented, what might that look like?
You mean something like a team ranking?
Yeah. So what my league has tried to do is take self-reported rankings for each player, 10 being professional, 1 being absolute beginner, add that all up and have that as a starting point for a ranking for a team, and then that sort of shuffles based on wins and losses through the season. Obviously it gets very complicated because even just the formula to arrive at an elo ranking for chess is quite intense. But I'm thinking like almost on like schoolyard terms, it's pretty clear usually when you have two teams that are familiar with each other, whether one team is stronger than the other, and if so, by how much. So in situations where that's the case, I wonder if it would make sense to have one team gets 10 stall counts, the other team gets 6, like as a parallel to chess, where sometimes if you're playing a timed game, the weaker player is going to have 10 minutes, the stronger player is going to have 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's a way to make up for slight discrepancy in level. Something could also be considered is to add some defenders, or to make sure that the offense starts at 6 players and so on. The thing is, just as in chess, altering the game within the rule set, so making someone start with a knight less or pawn less, changes pretty much the entire opening set. The advantage that you have in Go, with an handicap being 1 stone on a specific area of the board, that won't affect the rest of the game until pretty late, or until the players decide to play in that area. Of course, that's not always the case, but I think this handicap system is much more suited to Go compared to Ultimate or chess. That being said, I would love to see how we can adapt that to Ultimate. Maybe the stall count reduction that you mentioned is an interesting way to start that, or making an end zone smaller or stuff like that.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, like altering the structure of the field itself. But I guess you'd have to switch the end zone each time if you're changing sides, which might be tricky.
Yeah. Well, one side just has to play into the wind the whole time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I like that too, because quite often there's a prevailing wind direction, and you could couple that with a smaller end zone. And it seems to me that there's a big opportunity in recreational leagues, especially, for that type of thing to happen, because it ends up being more fun for both sides. I know in chess that's the case, where like if I'm playing a player that is, if I'm rated 1400 and this player is rated 1100, like being down the knight, I can try as hard as I can and I'm not going to feel bad about it. Whereas like I know in Ultimate, when if my team's stronger and we're playing a team of beginners that they're really just getting together as like something to do after work, we just simply can't play to our full ability that night, because it would not be really very sportsmanlike.
I suppose there's two ways of doing it in Go as well. You can either, because you end up playing a lot of disparate games. So you can either do a handicap where then both players can play at their full strength, or you do a teaching game where you start kind of even, but then the stronger player isn't trying to like win as hard as possible. They're actually maybe giving some advice to the other player, trying to guide the player even with their moves. Some things I've done in Ultimate practically to enable like the first team training against the second team include starting with a points deficit, and that's more like a handicap, because then both teams are trying as hard as they possibly can, but one team's got to score 10 points, the other team's got to score 3 points or something like that. something a bit more fun is I've gone onto the field on every turnover when it's been and changed the disc, right? And there's been one disc which has been like all bent out of shape, and the first team aren't allowed to rebend it. So then all their long throws are going outside in and all that kind of stuff.
That's hilarious.
And then when they turn over, then I go on and replace it with like a new nice disc for the
Oh
second
wow,
team.
where'd you get that? Is that like an original idea? That's really clever. I love that. Like the actual disc is like handicapped.
Yeah. So you have to make real safe decisions because there's a lot of things going against you there.
Yeah, it can take away, like, if you have several players on the team who can throw the length of the field, that's no longer effective.
Yeah. The 6 versus 7 thing is an interesting one because quite a lot of the time it can actually be harder for the team with 7. Like especially on defense, if you've got one more defender than the opponents, then it's actually very difficult to coordinate and work together, especially if you're not practiced at team defense, because kind of the fact that there is a poach sends a false signal so that then people don't mark their player when they're cutting towards that poached area. But then the poach then gets trapped there because then they're having to cover them players that are being allowed to go there. And quite often then just everybody ends up to being free. Loads of defenders end up not marking anyone properly. It can be harder for the team with 7.
So maybe for instructive purposes for anyone watching this who is like, resonating with this idea of trying to make a more balanced ultimate game, the player disadvantage, so I guess the equivalent to the chess material advantage or disadvantage, might not be the best way to start, but playing, I love the idea of the two different types of discs idea, even if you're not willing to sabotage one of the discs, because I could see that as being a hesitation. It's like people show up to the field and their discs are nice, and it's like, hey, we want to do this thing where one of the discs is warped. Who's putting their hand up to bend that thing out of shape? But I almost wonder if you take like if it's just a blatant mismatch, you take the team that is way stronger and they have to play with like a baseball cap or something that you can only throw that like 10 feet reliably. I don't know, that's probably not a good idea, but there are so many different types of flying objects that are similar to discs that would work. My brother has one of these little silicone, I forget what it's called exactly. You can get them online for a few bucks, and like you can throw that thing backhand, you can throw it forehand. You kind of grip it just with a finger, and it has like a concavity that runs around the rim of the it's almost just a puck that flies really really nicely through the air.
I've seen the adverts for them. I've also seen the Capsby Indiegogo fundraiser. I bought myself one of them that when they start producing them. It's like a hat that works quite well as a frisbee.
Really?
Yeah, but going back towards the the opening game between and comparing the 3 things we're talking about. Big difference between chess and Go in the opening is that the Go board starts completely empty, right? And then just for people that don't know the rules of Go, you take turns placing stones on the board, black stones, white stones. We've got some nice ones over here. And once the stone is played, they stay on the board until the end of the game or until they get captured. The way that stones are captured are if they're surrounded, right? So if you have, say, a stone on, say, with this handicap point here, then you'd need 4 stones around it. So basically each of the lines would have to be connected to an opponent's stone. For then that stone to be captured, it gets taken off the board. Diagonals don't count, and it's a territory-based game. So at the end of the game, the 2 players will decide that there's no more moves that they can make that will be beneficial to them, because the board is basically all either one person's territory, or it's divided into one person's territory and another person's territory. So you don't want to play in that person's territory because like you can no longer surround them just because of the positions they have. And then you don't want to play in your territory because that fills up your points, take points away from you. So it finishes by both players passing, and then you see the kind of territory map that's on the board to determine who the winner is. You can place stones all next to each other, and they form like a group. And then if the opponent can still surround that group, so long as they're tightly surrounded with no space, and when they are surrounded and that last liberty is taken, then that group gets taken off the board. So yeah, the opening.
Are there situations where like 4 will capture 1, and then like that team will come back whose 1 piece was captured and will surround the 4 and capture that as well?
Yeah, and that can happen very quickly as well. That can happen on the next move sometimes, and then something called a snapback. But you're allowed to play into a position which would be suicide, providing that you are taking other stones off the board, right? Otherwise, you're not allowed to play into a position that's totally surrounded. With the 4 right near it. And now the only rule I haven't mentioned, I think, is the code rule, which is where you have 4 here, but then you've got like 3 there, so that then if you play into the middle of those 4, you actually take one of those stones, and then the other player might wants to play back in that spot because then they take the other stone, right? So it's like an ever repeating pattern where you're just taking each other like this, and yeah, you're not allowed to do that. You have to play elsewhere before you then play there. So there's no like immediate kind of tag backs, basically. And that's like all the rules of Go. Everything else in the game kind of stems from those rules and derives from those rules. So I see it as being a very kind of organic, kind of natural game because the rules are so simple that all the strategical things that are applied to like a lot of things in the world, in life, in war, and in other games. In fact, the Chinese emperors, the warlords, had to become masters of Go before they were allowed to command troops, because there's a lot of strategical things that they needed to learn and be masters of before being allowed to actually have human lives in their hands. Things like the value of sacrifice and having a balanced approach to a battlefield, or more than a battlefield, like the ability to have like several battles going on at the same time and not needing to win every battle, but just needing them to end up in a way that wins the war. Yeah, I mean, you can see it's a big board, right? So you can understand that there's like a lot of things going on at the same time. But yeah, so the opening in Go, the board is open. You're placing stones on it. You're building the picture, turn by turn. And in chess, all the pieces are already there, and they just kind of advance towards each other, which I guess is more similar to Ultimate, where you have all 14 players on the field, and actually they're moving from the beginning.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement in chess and in Ultimate. Flo, I was wondering if I didn't get to a point in your book where you had any comparisons with sacrifice. I'd be very curious to know whether or not you were able to find points of sacrifice in Ultimate to correlate with chess.
I haven't, and that's one of the notions that we haven't implemented in our book. What I would think would correlate more to a sacrifice would be something like you have a very speedy player that will run deep towards the end zone, something to create a major threat that just can't be ignored. And so you make sure that one player only, one defender only will not suffice to stop that threat. So you make sure he's drawing at least another defender. And so you basically exchanged one currency, a material advantage that you have on that player, with another currency, a material superiority in number that you gained by drawing 2 defenders away. That's a way to exchange currencies, which I think is the closest one to a sacrifice at the moment. I have not found something clearer than that. Yes, you could consider also something like doing a huck and D, and you are sacrificing the possession to gain a space advantage.
Also, because I was thinking about this, it is difficult, the sacrifice one, but I was thinking, sometimes you have diversion cuts. You have like somebody cutting, making loads of noise to try and draw defenders, that then opens up a space elsewhere on the field. So yeah, you're sacrificing that offensive player in order for the team to gain offensively elsewhere.
Yeah, both of those sound, I mean, without being able to actually, lose players in the same way that you do in chess, both of those
Fortunately.
sound, hopefully, right. Yeah, it's like we have injuries. But yeah, it does sound as though, yeah, transitioning, it's almost as though with chess, you've got your different initiatives or your different imbalances that can create discrepancies in the game. So you've got your material advantage, your positional advantage. It's almost as though in Ultimate, you can't quite operate within one of those exclusively with regards to sacrificing. It's like your sacrifice brings you an advantage in one of those other areas.
Exactly.
So,
For example, you take a disc dead center in the middle of the field, so you consider the spatial advantage to be around equal between the offense team and the defense team, and then you same goes for the positional advantage that we characterize by being at the center of the field, so way as far away as you can from the sideline. If you throw a pass towards the end zone that is caught up near sideline, you won quite a large amount of spatial advantage, but you've traded it against positional advantage. So if you consider the regular pattern from open pass, pass on the open side, you are near the sideline, dump, you get away from the sideline at the cost of small yardage loss, and then a swing, you win back the spatial advantage, and all of that, if it's done in flow, is maintaining the initiative. And so you're always playing on the spatial advantage, positional advantage, initiative, and of course the material, because people that will have the disc in their hands and people that will not have the disc in their hands, that's just as important, will change. And that's something that we have in chess that does not really exist in Go. Please correct me if I'm wrong. The material is not born equal. You have to value the pieces because, well, for example, a knight in the center is much better than a knight on the rim, and it's just not worth the same. Just as some players are better with the disc, and some without the disc, and you have to balance all these type of advantages, material, spatial, and positional, at all times, which makes it an amazing game, because Ultimate is far from being solved at the moment.
Yeah, and this is where the complexity comes in. So in chess, the complexity comes from those different variables, the different material states of each piece, and that, yeah, from there comes the complexity, because then there's a lot of rules and a lot of things that have to kind of like interact. In Go, every piece has got the same value, and it's all just about the positioning and the arrangement, how powerful they have, how much influence they have, and that kind of stuff. The complexity comes from the more deeper, like, strategical kind of. Yeah, it's a strange complexity in Go, because the complexity stems from the simplicity of it.
Yeah, but I guess in Go it's different, because it's true that each stone has the same value. It's not like a rook or a pawn in chess, but I guess one notion that is very important in Go is like connection between the stones. This is one of the most important thing in Go, and I see that stones linked together can form a group, but this group, I guess, can be associated to one person. One group is like become one stone, and it's much more stronger than the simple stone. And that connection, I guess, is like you're discussing in motion offense, I guess. But this is, I guess, the link in Go game compared to chess and Ultimate.
Can I divert into that a bit deeper, Ryan?
yeah.
So the connection between the stones is something. Well, staying connected is a principle in hex offense. So that you're spread out as players, but you're not so.
And just to clarify for those of us that I'm not familiar at all with hex offense, and you did a quick switch there from Go to Ultimate. So just for everybody watching this who has no idea, We're now talking about hex ultimate or hex offense as an ultimate system.
Yeah. Well, like the players basically spread around the field, right? Rather than lumping them together to create space, they kind of occupy all the space.
So
Now,
instead of there being kind of like a stack situation,
yeah,
where they're concentrated, you've got everybody just kind of spread out.
yeah, exactly. Now that spreading can be too far, right? Because you can get disconnected. So that then the players, when one gets the disc, the other one isn't in a connected position. It takes them some time to actually get connected to provide then close options. And so that level of connection needs to be a balance between not being too close and not being too far, right? Because each player, and then this is where it kind of comes back to Go. I see each player as having like a sphere of influence, and those influences should be not like so distant that they don't affect each other at all, but then also not be so close that they're basically double covering in hex, right? But in stack offenses, especially vertical stack, the influences are overlapping, right? And so the players are concentrated, right, in stack into this small area, okay? And in Go, that would be called overconcentration, right? Because essentially there's too many in Go terms, too many stones or too many players in one area isn't like an efficient use of the space, right? And so that overconcentration can be punished by the other player in Go by surrounding, right? Because then you're able to, those stones are occupying small space. You can surround them, then you can capture them, essentially. And when they get surrounded, then they become heavy. I mean, Cédric's probably like thinking, I'm fudging these terms a little bit, but over-concentrated stones then become heavy when they become under pressure, and they become very inefficient. It's an inefficient use of space. So for me, like that was an interesting revelation, because not only hexagon offense is like a new way of thinking about the game on offense, but then hexagon defense, having those stacks and surrounded them, for me that became obviously the natural counter. Go is sometimes called the surrounding game, and so like it was interesting kind of seeing that those two thoughts in my mind kind of evolve in parallel. Like the actual, like, there must be a natural counter to stack, and then seeing it in Go and being like, oh, okay, this is like how we should react to the stack to make it into a bad thing.
That's very interesting, because exactly when we have the stones all together but too close in each to another, it's like weaker than just having the same amount of stones but like spread out on the board. So yeah, that's a very nice comparison.
Yeah, you couldn't see him, but he was nodding in approval the whole time.
I could sense something happening behind that C icon of like. Well, I actually was intuitively imagining Flo wanting to dive in there about chess specifically, and when those pieces being too concentrated are actually a disadvantage.
Yes, of course. So for a while, or at least, for a while, material was considered always of a certain value. So, for example, to explain that to a beginner, the relative importance of the pieces, because we are human, pretty materialistic, we will explain that 1 pawn is worth 1 point, a knight or a bishop is worth 3.5, depending on how you regard knights or bishop. That's a whole other discussion. A rook will be worth 5 points, a queen 9, and the king is worth the whole game. And so this value was considered pretty much fixed in stone for the whole game. And with recent advances, most notably the win of AlphaZero against Stockfish, so two computers in 2017, I guess, the relative value of the pieces was really shattered. How we understand that was pretty much disturbed by the way AlphaZero played, forcing Stockfish to have a queen, for example, on h8, so on the whole edge of the board, and the queen was completely. I will try to show something like that. The position was pretty much like this one, and so nothing on the king side could move for black. So this queen, which is supposed to be worth maybe a little lower, this queen, which is supposed to be worth 9 points, was only depriving the king for an escape square. And so the less space you have, the more your PCs get cumbersome. And actually having a tremendous player that is not at the right place can hurt your team more than not having him or her at all. Take, for example, into consideration someone who is great with while running, but is awful with the disc. Of course, that should not happen, but sometimes that is the case. Or someone that gets in the way of other players by cutting all the way on the board. So this type of importance or relation between space and players is and PCs is also something that could be should be considered.
Kind of reminds me of side stack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, precisely.
Yeah, and side stack, I believe, like, you know, it works against one-to-one defense, right? And it is forcing the defense to have to think about doing something different than just one-to-one, to have to break those tethers. But like it's been a long time coming. Like there's like I feel like side stack is like the end of this rabbit hole that Ultimate Strategy has gone down, where it's like, okay, how do we actually maximize the space on the field and minimize like the influence of the players? And it is by bunching them all together on the side of the field. And so it's a complete extreme in like one approach to the game. So it's kind of interesting that I think we've got there, and now everything's evolving, being like, okay, well, if that's the total extreme and it's working, how do we actually change defense to stop it working? Because having players on the sideline is devaluing those players.
And sorry, if I'm to try to reiterate that. So you, in a side stack, you have a situation where maybe a team is playing against a team that's playing man defense, and this team who's on offense is having trouble overcoming that man defense. So their answer is a side stack.
Yeah, in terms of just general evolution of strategy in the game as well, you know.
And how does the side stack like help with, you know, generally outmatched man to man?
Because if you're being marked 1-to-1, then you want those. If you're being marked 1-to-1, you control where the defenders go, right? If they stick strictly to that. And the best place for having all the defenders on the other team is on the sideline. So you move your players over to the sideline, all the defenders go over to the sideline, and then you have this massive expanse of open space.
And you just like cut into that.
Yeah, like, yeah. Well, yeah. Traditionally, there's like one person that starts in there, so that they don't have to run all the way in there. But then you just kind of take turns having them one-to-one matchups using that massive space. That's how Revolver won several championships in a row.
And that's another way of just playing with your best tools. If you have a tremendous player with the disc and one that is amazing while running, you just need both to work together. And as you pushed away all the other players, they are not getting in your space. Of course, the downside of that, if you are meeting someone who is as good as you are, you will definitely need the help of the whole team, the whole squad, to make sure that you are making progress with the disc. So it's kind of a double-edged strategy, and it can work pretty well if you are just better in all aspects compared to your opponents. So if you are saying that, I don't know, Revolver won 18th championships in a row with this strategy, that could be a testimony to their strategy, but that can also be something which is just showing that they are better. So regardless of the strategy, they would have won.
Well, yeah, maybe you can never say for sure. But I think it's down to defense. Like, because in Go and chess, if that strategy was applied, then that player would be defeated by the defense, right, by the opponent. You Go, obviously playing all your stones on one side of the board is like just like really bad. But at the same time, like if the opponent followed you and was like, every move that you made on the side, they went and like played next to it, then that would be terrible, and the moving on the side would be like not actually that bad. You're basically not being punished for terrible play. And that's what I believe is what we're seeing in Ultimate, and slowly people are coming around to the idea of like, okay, well, let's have a poach, and there's like, oh wait, hang on, let's have like a more of a structured way of play. Oh, actually, let's have all the players working together as a team, like, and actually let's position ourselves in the space that these players are trying to run to, break those one-to-one tethers completely. But it's been quite a long time that it's been these stacks and one-to-one. So there's a lot of stuff to kind of like unwind to kind of get out of that.
Well, we're getting into the final sort of 8 minutes of the time I'm able to attend this very compelling first call here. Is there anything you guys wanted to jump into that we haven't touched on? I'm going to close my window because here in Canada, like our cicadas are just making all this noise. That's what that buzzing is.
I would like to talk about Sente. Sente is initiative essentially, and it's a massive thing in Go, and I know it's big in most games. Holding that initiative, and in Ultimate Frisbee, the similarity I see is individually when you're moving against one-to-one defense. So when you're on offense and you've got a defender on you, as soon as you make a move that the defender has to respect, and then they commit to it, then you basically, so long as you can keep making good threatening moves and viable moves that they have to respect, then you're constantly winning the battle, right? So you make a move one way, then you make a move the other way, and you make a move in a third direction. So long as each of those moves are viable passes or whatever, then the defender has to respect each of them and has to kind of follow you or like try and mark each one of them. Now, that's a challenge, making those moves kind of like constantly, and as soon as you stop, as soon as you rest, then the defense have a chance to take back the initiative, get their positioning, survey the field a bit more. And in Go, it's similar in that you're playing a move, and if it's a threat to the other player, then they have to respond to it and defend. But then you can dot your moves all around the board based on how much you value the threats and how many points you consider they're each worth. And if you make a bad threat, if you make a move where the opponent is like, actually, that group's safe, I don't need to defend it, then they can then make a threat back to you, and then they have the initiative if you have to then respond to that rather than follow up on your initial threat. And in Ultimate, the same kind of thing. If you cut deep and the person with the disc is someone that your opponent knows can't throw that far, then they don't have to respect that move. They can seize the initiative and look at who's going to get the disc next and position themselves and just use that extra time that they bought. Cédric, do you have any thoughts on Sente initiative?
Yeah, I guess you're pretty.
Well, is Sente synonymous with initiative?
Yeah, Sente is initiative. Yeah.
Okay, Sente.
The term for initiative, and yeah, I guess it's true. And I was thinking the same thing. Like if the offense is not threatening anything, it's time for poaches and stuff. And like if there's one player that is not threatening anything, you can play 7 against 6 and reform your defense to make it put more pressure on it, or even to intercept a disc if you can. So yeah, it's and in Go we usually say that the person who has the more initiative in the game, so is more Sente in the game, usually wins it. So it's a very important notion in Go, and I guess in Ultimate as well. Because if in Ultimate we usually say that the team that can impose their pace usually wins, because we play like with our rhythm, and the other team is just following our moves.
It can also be considered like a team thing as well. So yeah, I think you were kind of touching on this. If the team is like attacking down the line, for example, pass, and then their flow stops, if they're then able to then move off the line and back around very quickly, then the defense don't get a chance to set, and they're kind of keeping initiative as a team, keeping Sente. But then if the flow stops and then the reset is marked out or whatever, and then suddenly there's like a red moment, where it's like the stall is on 5 or 6, and the defense now have the initiative, and they're able to actually like do something to make the offense's life hard in that particular moment.
So Felix, would you say that maybe the way to see initiative, because I think it's fairly, and Flo, you can correct me if I'm way out to lunch on this one, but in chess, I feel as though initiative is a little easier to see, in that, like, quite often the attacking move is certainly at the lower levels, it's pretty blatant, and then if it needs to be defended against, that move is also quite clear. As you go up in the levels and you're dealing with like 6 moves out, it's more subtle. But also in Ultimate, I wonder, Felix, if the pace of the passing and maybe starting to get into situations where there's dribbling could also be seen as initiative.
Yeah, well, yeah, dribbling is like a permanent holding of initiative. So the number of options that you have available when you're dribbling, providing you've got the support from your team, mean that it's much easier to kind of retain that initiative. Looking back at previous players and stuff, if on the other hand you catch a pass and turn away from the previous thrower, then it's you're not even sure that anybody else is free. Then it is very much risking losing the initiative. With dribbling, any option that's near you can be turned, can be faked at, and then cashed in on the other side, because you have those supporting players all around. It's just a case of having almost like having your eyes open and having that support in place for you. There's a couple of other things, like I was thinking a bit about like set plays, and set plays in Ultimate. Cédric mentioned Joseki, which is basically like a sequence of moves, normally in the corner in Go, like a sequence of moves that is generally accepted to be like a balanced kind of outcome for both players. And it's interesting that he didn't learn Joseki, I think he said, and that's also the way that I play as well. And some players at Go Club, they'll study Joseki so that they know exactly where you should be playing in the corners in these little battles that are like recurring. Whereas I kind of much prefer kind of not knowing like what the technical ideal is.
Is that similar to memorizing openings in chess?
Yes,
exactly.
Pretty similar.
Yeah.
Pretty similar. Just a small thing on initiative. I think we defined it in the book as dictating tempo, dictating pace. The thing is, in chess, as you said, Ryan, seeing who has the initiative is pretty obvious. The trick in Grandmaster and Master level is to make sure that you maintain the initiative. And I think in Ultimate it's pretty similar. Obtaining the initiative is pretty easy. You just make a pass towards the center, and then boom, you have an initiative because the angle of attack changed. The position of the players should be adjusted, and you can take advantage of these small movements to make sure that you have an inherent advantage over defense. The trick is, just as in chess, how to maintain it, how to make sure that all of the threats still are menacing, and maintaining the flow is what separates, I think, a good team in the next few years from a team that just doesn't know how to or doesn't really understand the game. It's fairly easy to give yourself an illusion of understanding the game just by learning opening by heart in chess. I just know 15 moves of theory in the Open Sicilian. I am sure to have a pretty good advantage, and then my opponent plays a non-theoretical move and I'm lost.
Yeah, I think the same is true in Ultimate, memorizing set plays and having cutting patterns. It's the illusion of having offense when it's all like planned out like that, and you're supposed to do it kind of in that kind of order. And then you have the complicated set plays where when there's a deviation or when the defender stops something, then you have like path B or path C that you can go down. Again, that's not the way that I enjoyed playing Ultimate, and I think the illusion is a good word there to kind of describe that. So the illusion of having a smooth offense is actually just when you have like a set plan that you're trying to stick to. As soon as it breaks down, then what have you got? Then you have to actually play offense. So why not actually just practice playing offense from the beginning?
Exactly, and then you have to balance the different threats to make sure that you maintain this initiative. The initiative, if there is no movement at all, the initiative belongs to the defense because they can surround you, they can block all the threats, they're already well positioned. If there is too much chaos, then the offense is lost all by itself. because some errors and will occur eventually. So there is an optimum that should be reached, which is of course in the middle of these two extremes. And the more dribbling you will do, the closer you will reach a number of players around the particular surface and particular area that will lead to chaos. And so you have to balance dribbling until it gets way too chaotic, and do a pass on the other side of the field, for example, to spread out the game, diminish the entropy, the local entropy, and then start again. And this balancing act between passes and dribbling and hacks is the key to maintaining this initiative. And so having players that can recognize the different situation and know how to act accordingly is what we try to teach them, and hopefully we'll succeed.
Very nicely said.
Yeah.
Something interesting in defense, and we can see it in Go, it's to cut initiative. And usually in Go, we say that if there's a lot of initiative on one side, we don't want stones too close to the attack, because if we're too close, we usually create more problems than solutions. And I guess in dribbling, it's the same thing. As an ultimate player, usually when I see a dribble, I just take 2 steps back to cut it than getting close to it. And in Go, we see usually we're like 1 or 2 intersection further than the attack to stop it, because we can't stop it too close to another. And I know that in Ultimate World, we usually to be an effective defense, we have to be really close to the offense. But I guess it's not always true when we want to cut initiative. I guess it's better to step back and to slow it down and to cut it.
Yeah, because if they cut through and if they penetrate through, then it's really bad, like in Ultimate and in Go.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, guys, this has been a wonderful call. If everybody's good with the territory and the ground we've covered here, I need to get going. But it's been an awesome call. We've covered a ton of ground.
Yeah, I guess we can talk about it like
several hours.
Yeah, this could have been a 3-hour call for sure. So maybe there will be a part 2 at some point. We can kind of coordinate that after the fact. But it's been awesome chatting with you guys, and I'm just happy to have been a part of this call and to have some exposure to high-level players like yourselves on all the different levels of games we're talking about. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And anyone viewing as well who is excited about a part 2, just put in the comments kind of what you'd like us to talk about. I have a few notes on, faking and attacking, and proverbs like a rich man should not pick quarrels, and how that relates to kind of Ultimate Frisbee, kind of take what they give you. There's a lot of things we could be talking about. So yeah, anyone with any ideas, put it in the comments.
Yeah, and also we should probably give an idea of where they might want to track us down if they find this somewhere randomly on the internet. So Felix, do you want to talk about Hive a little bit too?
Hive Ultimate on YouTube. Loads and loads of videos there, explaining kind of the higher level ideas of modern strategy and Ultimate, and hopefully then branching into more kind of beginner things soon. And also hiveultimate.com. We have a Patreon if you'd like to access the kind of higher tier content and training content, so you can actually train these ideas of dribbling and surrounding stacks, because if you don't train them, then how are you going to do them? And then also how are you going to play against them when they start being played against you?
Great. And Flo and Cédric, where can anyone who's watching this find you guys and what you're doing and some of your writing?
Okay, so the book is called Ultimate in Motion, and we published it on Google Books. And I think that's one of the ways to reach it. The other way is to go on Hive Ultimate, and that's one of the gifts we grant to tier 3 Patreons.
Beautiful. All right. And if anybody's looking to find me, I'm at frisbeethrows.com for now, hopefully contributing to Hive Ultimate at some point when my back is in better shape. Contending with a bulging disc at the moment, so I'm restricted to things like video calls. But until the next time, guys, I will bid you farewell.
Thank you. Goodbye.
See you.
See you guys.
Take care.